You probably can't remember what you had for breakfast yesterday, and let's not even talk about your Netflix password. Meanwhile, there is a crow outside your window right now mapping your facial features because you looked at it weirdly in 2022. Animals can hold a grudge like a toxic ex, but what happens when instead of ruining their day, you actually save their life? Do they remember the kindness, or are we just desperately projecting our own human emotions onto them? To answer that, we have to look at a massive elephant standing motionless in the blistering African heat. Around her feet, veterinarians work frantically. Dirt, sweat, and adrenaline fill the air. Hours earlier, this giant had collapsed from a poisoned arrow wound, a slow, agonizing death sentence. Now, complete strangers surround her. Hands touch her rough skin. Unfamiliar voices fill the air. Strange machines hum and beep. And then, she wakes up. For a moment, nobody breathes. Nobody moves. The elephant blinks, stabilizes her massive weight, and looks directly at the humans who just saved her life. Not through them. At them. It's an intense, heavy stare, almost as if she's trying to process a glitch in her reality. Months later, something even stranger occurs. The exact same elephant encounters one of those rescuers out in the bush. She stops. She approaches, and slowly, gently, she reaches out her trunk to touch them, almost as if she remembers. But does she? Can a wild animal actually look at a human and think, hey, that's the guy who pulled the arrow out of my side? Or are we just seeing what we desperately want to believe? Because memory is one thing, recognition is another. And true gratitude, that might be something else entirely. To unlock this mystery, we have to look at how a brain decides what is worth saving to its hard drive, and what belongs in the trash folder. Every animal lives inside a high-stakes world of rapid-fire decisions. Friend or enemy? Food or poison? Safe or dangerous? Get these choices wrong just a few times, and evolution permanently removes you from the server. So memory isn't a luxury or a hobby. It's survival technology. The animals that successfully remembered useful information lived long enough to reproduce. The ones that didn't, well, they became history. But here is where things get genuinely weird. For most wild animals, humans occupy a completely baffling category. We don't fit into the evolutionary cheat codes. We're not predators in the traditional sense, yet we hunt. We're not prey, but we are fragile. We're not direct competitors for their food, yet we destroy their homes. Sometimes we feed them, sometimes we rescue them, sometimes we protect them, and sometimes we destroy entire habitats. To a wild animal, a human is a chaotic wild card, and unpredictability is exactly the kind of flashing red light that evolution teaches brains to remember. Perhaps animals don't remember us because we're special. Perhaps they remember us because we are deeply, profoundly confusing. And elephants aren't the only ones keeping receipts. Thousands of miles away, in a completely different environment, another mystery was unfolding in the skies. Researchers studying crows made a discovery that borders on a psychological thriller. The birds could recognize individual human faces, not just for days or weeks, but for years. In one famous study, scientists captured crows while wearing a specific, distinctive rubber mask. The actual trapping experience lasted only a few minutes, and the birds were safely released. But the crows never forgot. Years later, anyone walking through the campus wearing that exact same mask was instantly swarmed and mobbed by a loud, angry army of birds. But that wasn't even the craziest part. Young crows that had never been captured, birds that weren't even born when the experiment happened, started attacking the mask too. Somehow, information about a specific human face had spread through the bird community like wildfire. It was literal avian gossip. The birds weren't simply remembering generalized danger. They were remembering a specific someone. Then we look at the ocean. Around the world, marine researchers began reporting encounters that sounded less like science and more like a Hollywood script. Rehabilitated dolphins were approaching their former caretakers years after being released into the open ocean. Wild animals were lingering near familiar research boats, splashing playfully, and responding to specific human voices they hadn't heard in ages. While these individual stories were incredibly difficult to verify with strict data, the sheer volume of them hinted at a shocking reality. Some animals are keeping tabs on us long after the interaction ends. At first glance, the explanation seems obvious to us. Gratitude. It makes us feel good. After all, if someone saved your life, you'd remember them, right? It's a beautiful, heartwarming idea. The problem is, evolution does not care about heartwarming ideas. Evolution cares about calorie efficiency and survival. A gazelle that forgets what a lion looks like doesn't get a second chance. A crow that ignores danger doesn't pass on its genes. Natural selection heavily rewards remembering threats, which means something in our rescue stories doesn't quite fit. Why waste precious brain power and mental storage space on a human who helped you once and then disappeared into the sunset? Consider the elephant again. They possess some of the most legendary memories in the animal kingdom. They can recall complex migration routes spanning hundreds of kilometers, pinpoint hidden water sources visited decades prior, and identify the distinct voices of family members separated for half a lifetime. But their memory isn't magic. It's an adaptation. When an elephant experiences a traumatic rescue event, a neurochemical firestorm happens inside its brain. Stress hormones surge. Attention sharpens to a razor-thin point. Every single detail is captured in high definition. The strange chemical smells, the unfamiliar clothing, the faces of the humans standing nearby. Neuroscientists call this emotional memory enhancement. When an experience has extreme survival value, the brain stores it in a vault, completely separate from everyday memories. Which means the real question isn't whether the elephant can remember the humans. The real question is, would forgetting them be a fatal mistake? But this is where the story takes its ultimate turn. Until now, we've been asking if animals remember humans, but that might be entirely the wrong question. A lion remembers its prey. An elephant remembers water. A crow remembers danger. Those are things, but humans aren't things. Humans are individuals. And recognizing an individual requires a massive upgrade in brain power. It means building a mental model, a permanent representation of someone specific. Not just what they did, but who they are. Suddenly, we are no longer just talking about basic memory. We are talking about the concept of identity. For decades, mainstream science assumed that this level of sophisticated social memory belonged exclusively to humans. Then, the evidence became impossible to ignore. We learned elephants recognize hundreds of distinct social relationships. Dolphins identify each other through unique, individualized vocal signatures, essentially names. Primates remember specific friends and rivals after years of separation. Over and over, nature reveals the same lesson. Animals aren't just mapping environments, they are mapping personalities. So, do wild animals remember the humans who saved them? The science says yes, many probably do. Far more than we ever used to imagine, but they might not be telling themselves the same story we are. They may not understand the concept of a hero. They may not comprehend medical rescue. They may never experience the human emotion of gratitude, the way we write about it in books. Yet what is actually happening is arguably much more profound. Their brains are doing exactly what millions of years of evolution designed them to do, identifying the ultra-rare, unpredictable individuals who completely change the outcome of their survival, and locking that information away for life. The deepest wonder here isn't just that an animal can remember us. It's that a brain shaped by the brutal, unforgiving laws of nature can make room for a completely different species inside its memory. A species that can be predator, protector, threat, and ally all at once. It leaves us with one final, fascinating question. When a wild animal looks into the eyes of a human, it recognizes, what story is it telling itself about us? Because the answer might reveal just as much about their world as it does about our fragile place within it.